Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host, Rich Gear, here as well. And Doug, you want to introduce us to our guest here?
Well, this is Paul Thompson, and he's been a friend of ours for quite a while.
Yes.
This is his first time on our TV show. And the reason that we're having him on our show tonight is because he spent a year in the Middle East. You got back just about 6 months ago or something like that.
Yep.
And he's been coming back and visiting us since then. But I wanted to have him give a little bit of his impressions about his trip over there, what he was doing, and you were teaching some English as a second language, right?
That is correct.
ESL. Okay. All right.
And so you were over there for a year, and you completed your project, and now you're back. And why don't you give us a little bit of your impressions of your visit and what you learned during your time while you were over there?
Yeah, well, it was a very unique experience. I'm very glad I was able to go and meet all the people I did, and to learn a little bit about the history and culture of the region.
So, this title of the show, Doug, is it Christianity, Islam, and Atheism in the Middle East?
That's right.
That's what the title of the show is for those people who want to know. And Paul, you're going to enlighten us a little bit about some of this stuff here. I'm kind of excited about that because, we hear a lot of stories from here and from our perspective, or even from different whatever, but you were actually right in the milieu, mm-hmm. and you lived it, and you know the good, bad, and the ugly, probably, right? So,
yeah.
Why don't you? Where do you want to? I don't know. Why don't you give a little bit of a? Do you have any history, or do you want to give us a little bit of a synopsis about what's going on over there? So,
yeah.
Before we get into it, yeah.
Well, the region's changed a lot over the years. It started out as originally very polytheistic and had a lot of nomadic groups, and the people were...
Where you were at?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So they started out very polytheistic, and around the time of Jesus, Christianity started spreading out from Israel into the Middle Eastern regions.
I was going to, thank you for giving that. As I was going when you were talking about the polytheism, so that would be before Christ.
Yeah.
And then Christ came in, and Christianity spread out quite a bit in this area. Yeah,
it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, what about the Jews during that time? There was we're talking primarily it was in Israel, or did Jews actually live in other regions as well?
Yeah. From my understanding, most of the Jews were located in Alexandria and Israel, and after the conquest, where the Romans came in and sacked the Jews.
Right, the diaspora when they got sent out.
They just kind of went all over into the place. They went into Middle East, into Europe, and they just settled wherever they could go.
But they were still pretty much of a minority wherever they were at, where Christianity began to spread and it actually took over the Roman Empire for a while,
Yeah, and in the Middle East, it was actually kind of opposite of the Roman Empire, because in the Roman Empire, a lot of the cities became Christian centers.
Okay.
Whereas in the Middle East, it was a lot of the rural areas where the cities were still primarily polytheistic.
I see. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, we see in the Bible mentioned places like Ephesus and Laodicea and a lot of these other places which are in Turkey right now. I think that if you think of the Bible and the early Christian history, a lot of the places that are now Islamic were Christian centers. And what do you think might have been the reason for that change?
Well, when Muhammad rose and Islam it really just spread out all over the place in that region, and it really became the primary religion of that area, both politically and religiously.
We know that happened. I guess what Doug was asking was why do you think that happened? Was the church itself kind of impotent at that time, or corrupted, or just kind of dead? Because you're talking 600 years after Christianity first, it spread out. And I know in Asia Minor, it was like, I've heard there were letters from the bishop one time that said, hey, by the end of the first century or second century, virtually 90%, they said upwards of 90% were Christian. But by the end of the 3rd century, they said, well, hold services even though nobody comes. It's like something happened and things began to go down. And we know that happened in Rome, and we know some of those history. But the Middle East I'm not as familiar with as to why that happened. And maybe, I don't know if you know that either.
I know there were a lot of different cults of religion and like sects of Christianity that sort of were different than the ones that formed in the Roman Empire.
Sure.
Whereas, so like, I'm having trouble coming up with a specific example, but there was like Zoroastrianism, is that
Zoroastrianism, yeah. That was kind of earlier. That was actually, well, Zoroaster, it was like Star Wars, like they were stars, you know. Some people think that some of the Magi might have been some of these people. They're Persia.
Yeah,
Persia,
some of those influences came into Christianity, and like there was a little more like regarding like people of great knowledge, and like you go out to see these Christians who are very like kind of like the gurus that you see where people go to them for knowledge.
Okay.
So you're talking about the false doctrines of the Nicolaitans and the Gnostics and those type of people.
Well, there was a lot of that, I know.
It was even mentioned in the Gospels and in the letters of Paul that those things were.
You read about the early church fathers too. You read Polycarp and Justin Martyr, and you get Irenaeus and some of the Tertullian and some of these guys. You read some of the fathers like in the 2nd and 3rd and even up to the 4th. And really, there was a lot of things going on. But that makes sense that there would be a different flavor of Christianity, I know. And then when Rome kind of took over the Christian church in the Roman Empire, it kind of made it, that was the only game in town. All these different other flavors were not welcome anymore. But do you think that caused some of the problems with that?
It did. Yeah. There were a few problems with that.
Because I mean, I know Muhammad. We know some of the history of Muhammad. When he was in Mecca, he was trying to get people. He was trying to be fairly conciliatory toward the Jews and the Christians, and the Zoroastrians were there too. Okay, that I do know. So, and then he was not accepted at all. He went over to Medina and started raising his armies. And the armies are what took over a lot. And so you convert or you die. If you were a person of the book, a Jew or a Christian, you wouldn't have to be killed necessarily, but you would be subjugated. Okay, and I know that happened quite a bit. How he was able to get that much. I'm always amazed at how does somebody like Alexander the Great, or how do they raise these armies? How do they do what they do? But he was able to do it, and that I know was a lot of it. But so Christianity goes into the decline in the Middle Eastern areas during this time.
Yeah.
And then the Arab version of Islam or Mohammedism got really big. And I know that later on you talked about Turkey, Doug, the Ottoman Empire.
Right.
Much later has another branch of Islam, which was even almost more virulent than the first one. I mean, it was really big. It was bad. We almost lost Europe, except for Charles Martel and some of those people in the you're talking about the 1400s area time.
Yeah, there was a reason for the Crusades.
Yeah, and that's, people don't like to hear that, but there was a reason for the Crusades. Even though I'm not a big fan of the popes, as obviously as you know, but there was a lot of stuff going on, and it was not good. You know.
Yeah, it's very interesting because all these religions and ideas always influence each other. So like. One of my Arab friends actually said, like, yeah, you know, those crusades were bad, but they were influenced a lot by the jihad, because, like...
That guy's an honest guy, because that is true. The jihad, you know, it was pretty heavy-handed. They did some really nasty things, and you know, and I'm not saying that the Crusaders didn't do nasty things. They did, but is it any more justified because it was retaliatory or initiated? But the point of it is, yeah, the jihad is really, it is some really bad things to Jerusalem and some of the other cities that took over. Well, now you were over there. You say a year. What year were you? When were you over there?
That would have been 2016.
2016. And you were there for your so all of the year 2016 you were there then? Okay.
Yep, just about.
And when you were there, obviously you're in the middle of the mix. Were there Christians, Jews? Were there atheists? I mean, the Middle Eastern area, you feel like it's all even though you may not believe in Islam, it's all religious or theistic in their culture and in their worldview. And yet, it seems to me, based on what you've written on your outline, that there are people there that really don't believe in anything. They're atheists as well.
Atheism, they're sort of a recent phenomenon, or is it something that has always been there?
Well, atheism really goes back all the way even to Greece. They've traced it, I know, at least that far.
Okay.
And I know there's been a more recent resurgence of it, especially with the westernization of culture and sort of the introduction of Western ideas. A lot of atheism comes in that way, but there's also a big pushback against it.
Against atheism or against Islam?
Well, atheism and Islam do not go well together.
Yeah.
Sort of like Islam and Christianity, or Christianity and atheism, they don't mix very well.
Yeah, the only reason I seems to me, at least in this country, the atheists seem to be making more common cause with Islam, is because I believe the enemy of my enemy is my friend. In other words, they don't like each other either, but they hate the Christians more. Okay.
But there's also a rise of Muslims who are Muslim by birth, and Christians who are Christian by birth.
So they're basically not real Christians. They're cultural Muslims, just like we have cultural Christians here. Okay.
Yeah, because a big thing to understand is that when you're born, you get your religion stamped on your identity. So that if I'm a Muslim parent and I have kids, they're Muslim kids. If I'm a Christian parent and I have Christian kids, there's going to be Christian kids.
Right. And we've heard that over the years. Yeah, if you're a Muslim, you're always a Muslim, even if you recant or reject it or turn away from it. They consider you never anything but a Muslim. But that's caused a lot of problems. I know, and especially people who come here to the States, you hear about people who've left it, and sometimes they get killed, or they definitely get ostracized and put down. I imagine it's even worse in the area where you're at, where you were at. But the problem with Christians, though, yes, we know there are cultural Christians, but the worldview of the Christian is, well, you can't just say you're one because you were born in it. I mean, we used to do that to some extent, but not for a long time.
Now, what do you mean by a one-way conversion? I see that in your notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like you can be born a Christian or born a Muslim, but if you are born a Christian, you have the option of becoming a Muslim. It's not the same way the other way around.
You can't become a Muslim and become a Christian.
Because it's very culturally and politically bad to no longer be a Muslim. Well, and that's where atheism has an advantage, because you can go, oh, okay, I'm going to be an atheist, but still be a Muslim. They don't have to change their identity to become an atheist.
Oh, is that really? Okay.
Yeah, I met a guy who he let me know that he was an atheist, but he still had Muslim on his identity, and he felt fine with that because he could still go to and practice his Muslim culture as he saw it without infringing on his atheistic beliefs.
What would be a Muslim culture? What would be some things that they would do? Because to me it's all wrapped up. I know it's a religio-political statement. I understand it's not merely. I mean, Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this earth." Where in Islam it is, okay, and there's no doubt about it. It's a geopolitical movement as well as a religion. But I mean, to me, everything I think about Islam is, okay, you got to pray you got to pray 5 times a day. Well, why would an atheist do that? Or you got to make the Hajj, you make a pilgrimage to Mecca once in your lifetime. That's sort of religious too. And so, what would be Muslim that's not religious?
Well, that's the thing, is that you would still go, like, it wouldn't be Islam if it wasn't religious. But they mix their culture with their religion a lot of times, and it sort of all becomes sort of this big, it's part of culture now. And that's part of the reason it affects atheists and Christians, because they see it less as religious as cultural.
Okay.
Now, are there legal Christian churches in the Arab nations?
Yes, there are. Quite a few, actually.
And what is are there restrictions on them, or are there problems that they face?
I know different countries vary in differences, but a lot of from ones I've experienced, there are some churches called Catholicism, Orthodox, and the Anglican Church that are
Protestant,
well,
but more old line Protestant, huh?
yeah, because they
I'm saying, how do they treat evangelicals or charismatics over there?
yeah.
Are they even allowed over there? Because those are fairly recent movements in Christianity, compared to that.
Yeah, like Orthodoxy, Catholicism, and Anglicans are easy to recognize because they have a nice structure, kind of like popes and
Right.
bishops, whereas the evangelicals don't have that. So a lot of times, for a recognized church, you need some sort of bishop. So for the evangelicals, they come under an umbrella. I went to a evangelical church that was recognized as Anglican for legal reasons.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I think some of the same things happen in Russia. They like some of the I think like the Assemblies of God are sort of grandfathered in under the Baptists, and so there are. It's sort of a weird thing, isn't it? How?
Well, let me ask you this: what happens when, let's say, a Muslim marries a Christian? I mean, is that allowed, or how does that work?
It's not technically allowed, but one of my friends was a Christian trying to marry a Muslim, and they were having a whole lot of legal and religious mess with family and courts and all sorts of stuff.
Well, it's kind of interesting because the Bible even kind of warns Christians, don't be unequally yoked. You marry a pagan or an unbeliever, it's really not a good idea. They do that even, we get mad at them, but the scriptures are kind of clear. That's not it. We do it. We're allowed legally to do it, but it's not a good or a wise idea according to scripture, because you get somebody who doesn't believe in God and you want to marry them because my heartbeat is a flutter of this person. I'm going, well, that may be, but don't expect to convert them. They may trash you and bring you down, and so that's what he was warning about.
Yeah.
So I kind of get the Islamic side of that, even though I think that they're in the wrong in the sense that they're a false doctrine.
Yeah.
But that's my perspective as an evangelical Christian, as a Christian who believes in not only the sovereignty of God, but the ability for us to choose Him. The other thing that gets me is in Islam, there's really not a lot of it seems to me, when you talk about the atheism in the Muslim, they don't really have a lot of supernaturalism in it. They don't believe they believe Muhammad had a revelation, but miracles are pretty much non-existent in Islam.
Except for jinn. There's this thing called jinn.
Yeah, genies.
They're like spirits.
Genies, yeah.
And they're basically like evil spirits that are opposed to God.
But
so like
that goes back to the pagan. That goes back to before Christ. That you talk about something.
But they're referenced in the Quran. That's the big.
Are they? Oh, is that right? Yeah, that's something I think I might. Now that you mention that, I might remember that, but I forgot that. I didn't. Yeah, they are mentioned in the Quran.
Yeah, I remember some of the people who were been on the search for Noah's Ark. The people who were leading them up to where they thought the ark was wouldn't go any further after a certain point because they believed that the jinn resided in the ark, and so they didn't want to. They told them that if you want to go there, you got to go on your own from here, and so I think that there is that sort of supernatural thing. It's sort of sad to realize that there's a recognition that there's some sort of supernatural stuff going on in the evil world.
Yeah,
but then to deny the supernatural that is from God, and I think even us Christians are guilty of that. That there's so much emphasis on seeing things in the natural, and that we miss out on the supernatural things that actually go on that come from God.
It was interesting though, because talking to some of the more religious Muslims, they saw everything as supernatural.
Okay.
Is that right? Okay.
Because God is holding everything together. If He stops doing anything, it stops. Like one of them was like saying, like science is all fake. Like you can't predict anything because God chooses what happens every time.
That is true. My brother Dave, who was an interrogator in Iraq, he said, well, they were trying to train him how to do soldier. Well, if Allah wills, I'll be able to shoot the target. Well, if Allah wills, you know, and basically they wouldn't train properly because it was if Allah wills, there was no sense of responsibility on their own part. Well, I'll hit it if Allah wills, but I can't just do it on my own. I go, that was the weirdest thing. He just told me that just over the last 4th of July weekend there, but that reminds me what you were saying there. But I was saying that, well, except for the jinn, though, I can understand why atheism and Islam, they might feel like they're a little more compatible because there's no supernaturalism pretty much allowed in Islam.
Now, it's interesting that Turkey just passed a law recently that doesn't allow teaching of evolution in their schools.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, and in many respects, Islam is fairly strong in teaching of creationism, but when you get down to the end of things, and you come to the conclusion, well, which God are you talking about? Then they go to Allah, and you know that's one of the things we have to be aware of in the creation evolution issue is that you can lead them all the way down to the end of the logic of that there was a creator God. Then you have to make sure that you explain to them who the creator.
That is the most difficult part of it, Doug, because we believe if you really study the scriptures, the pre-incarnate God that the Jews worship was generally Yeshua, was Jesus. The Father no one's ever seen. Abraham saw God, and so who would that have been? The second person of the Trinity is what we believe as Christians, and that is unacceptable to Muslims. God didn't become a little baby. Their God is too small to be small. Because, you know, he's not great enough to humble himself. You know, to me that's the sign of true wealth and true greatness is the ability to humble yourself. People, it's the idea of like it's the nouveau riche. You know, the people who are rich, brand new, they got to show it all off. The old people. The people who got old money, they don't need to do any of that. They'll dress like us, you know what I mean?
Now, explain to us what you observed about Islam. You know, there's 2 different sects of Islam.
Is there only 2?
There's many, but the 2 big ones.
The 2 big ones, Sunni and the Shia, right?
Because they split over who was Muhammad's successor. And
right.
So if you think it's a family lineage, you go one way, and if you think it's a society chooses who the next leader is, you go the other way.
Right. Which one is which?
I believe Sunni is the culture chooses who is the leader, and Shia follows Muhammad's family.
Muhammad's son and their descendants. Okay.
Their current imam or faith leader is actually a great descendant of Muhammad.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. I just wasn't sure how the other one picked, but they broke off centuries ago. And
other little ones that broke off along the way, but they're kind of the umbrella for all the others.
Like, because you got things like, what are they? You got the Baha'i faith is actually a branch of Islam, you know. But still, yeah, you hear all the fighting is Sunnis and Shias seem to be fighting each other. But
and the reason they fight so much is because they both see the other one as apostate, because oh, you're not a Muslim, and there have been a lot of efforts to consolidate that and go, oh yeah, we are both Muslim, we're both fine. We need to deal with the real terrorists.
Yeah, which is the great Satan, right? Which is
actually they're most of this consolidation effort is because of ISIS and groups like that.
Oh, really? So the jihadists they're fighting them. Well, there is. Iraq just kicked out the I don't know with the ISIS. ISIS is what? Are they Sunni or Shia?
I don't remember. I just know that they're very anti-Kurd, anti-Christian, and
that I know, yeah. And they just booted them out. The Iraqi army just booted them out. But then when Iran and Iraq got fought because one's Shia and one's Sunni, and I can't remember which one is which of them. But you said you only got border problems. What are we talking about with border problems?
Well, after World War II, when they divided the borders and drew those up, they really had no regard for cultural or ethnic divisions. They sort of just lumped everyone in together. So that's part of what's caused a lot of these problems is you have Shia groups and Sunni groups in one country, and whoever has the majority has the most power, makes the most decisions.
Oh, yeah.
So how does Islam affect Christianity?
Other than the obvious, huh? No.
Yeah.
A lot of it is cultural things that have become seen as, oh, that's not Islam, that's just part of our culture, like honor and shame and honor killings and other things that nominal Christians might find acceptable that find their roots in Islam.
Honor killing? I don't think, is there any Christians that accept that? I don't know.
Some nominal Christians will
Yeah, in the Middle
perform an
East.
honor killing.
In the Middle East, really?
Yeah,
Wow.
for like apostasy.
You can kill some, oh, wow, okay.
It's not very common,
Yeah.
but it happens enough that it's seen as a problem.
It would
in the
make more
church.
sense in Judaism, quite frankly. Judaism does allow killing for apostasy. If you look at Mosaic law, people who are, that's what happened when Jesus rescued the woman taken in adultery or apostasy, they could stone him to death, you know?
But there aren't many. I don't think there's any Jews in the Middle East except for Israel now, because after Israel sprang up, there was a lot of Jewish persecution that drove them to
Oh,
Israel.
yeah, okay. So they're all, well, I know in a lot of the countries like Palestine and other places, they broomed a lot of the Christians too. I know there's a lot, church I go to, there's Palestinian Christians. Their family was, well, there's not many Palestinian Christians anymore at all. So
Yeah.
anyway, so did you have any problem yourself when you were there? I mean, being
Not much. There,
Okay.
most of the conflict I got was people trying to convert me or
to Islam.
yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I didn't mind so much. There was only one time I really felt unsafe, and that was when there was a bomb that went off nearby that wasn't targeting me.
Okay. Wow. But I'm going to ask you this question: how successful, or even is there any attempts at Christianity trying to convert Islam over there? Is it pretty much done?
It's very, very little. Because it's so illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap up here. Okay, we'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.